Yahoo Fantasy Auto Racing, the week 17 in the Tucson Racing Group. We are well into the 2010 Fantasy Auto Racing season. This week we're going to review the Lennox Industrial Tools 301 held at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway this week. Take a look at what happened on the track as well as what's happened in the Tucson Racing standings. On the track itself, this week's winner, Jimmie Johnson, picks up the victory after a last lap pass by Kurt Busch. Tony Stewart wound up second, and Kurt Busch came home third, with Jeff Gordon and Kevin Harvick rounding out the top five. In the points standings, Kevin Harvick holds on to a 105-point lead over Jimmie Johnson and 161 points over third place Kyle Busch. Storylines from the race. Let's start with the front row jinx. In 18 previous tries, no driver from the front row has won at New Hampshire. That streak, unfortunately, would continue for the front row drivers. On the pole Friday, Juan Pablo Montoya was fastest in qualifying. His race actually started out great. He was one of the contenders to pick up the victory, but the team made some did not make the right adjustments late in the race. Montoya started losing spots quickly, ruffled up a lot of feathers on his way backwards through the field, had some run-ins with Jeff Gordon and Clint Bowyer, among others, and was finally put in the wall by Reed Sorensen, who was actually running a lap behind Montoya at the time. Some of the drivers had just had enough of Montoya's antics as he struggled to try to keep ground on the racetrack, wound up in the wall, and brought home his car on the wrecker. So the pole sitter was out. What about second place? The other front row starter, Kasey Kahne. He actually ran a very good race as well, was probably more likely to win than Montoya was, but Kahne wound up blowing up while running in third. So Kahne's day was done mid-race, and he was unfortunately a non-factor by race's end as well. So the front row drinks continues for an 18th straight visit to New Hampshire. The race was pretty much dominated by Jimmie Johnson, Jeff Burton, and Kyle Busch. Those three ran up front all day, led a lot of laps, and because of the green flag nature of this race, not a lot of opportunities for other drivers to make some noise towards the front of the pack. Green flag racing, in fact, was infectious this week. There was a green flag period of 201 laps during the middle portion of the race, which put a lot of drivers a lap down. And for a lot of teams that needed setup changes, they weren't able to make any adjustments under caution, so a lot of teams fell by the wayside quickly. Late racing was very hard for a lot of drivers. Kyle Busch and Jeff Burton got into a run-in. Jeff Burton was a sitting duck at the front of the field. He was leading with less than 40 laps to go. He did not pit. The rest of the field did. This means Jeff Burton wound up being a sitting duck in front of the field. He had old tires while everybody else had new tires, and he was falling fast through the standings, holding up as much ground as he could, but wound up in a run-in with Kyle Busch as he was slipping back and Kyle was moving forward. So both those guys should have had top fives or top tens and wound up finishing outside the top 10 for both of them. Also, Denny Hamlin and David Rudiman, both drivers running in the top 15, got into a run-in late in the race as well, and had some differences to share with each other after the race also. But the big-time bump and the big-time action was up front. In the last 10 laps, Kurt Busch, on a restart, was able to tap Jimmie Johnson's bumper, move him out of the way, take the lead. Johnson gave him a shot to try to get around him, couldn't do it. Got a second opportunity to do so coming to the white flag, and Johnson was able to go side by side with Kurt Busch as they took the white flag for the final lap. Johnson was able to complete the pass, and Tony Stewart was able to sneak by as well. So Johnson picks up the win on a last lap pass and wins the second straight race of the season. In the Tucson Racing Group, Team Edwards picks up the third win of the season for that squad. 290 points this week. A low-scoring week for a lot of teams, but Team Edwards came out on top of it all. Edwards had three drivers in the top 10. Kurt Busch in third, Joey Logano in ninth, and A.J. Allmendinger, the class of Group C, came home 10th. This was good because the team had to overcome Kasey Kahne's 36th place finish. Second this week was Hulk Smash by just 26 points out of first, 264 points overall. Hulk Smash had two drivers in the top 10. That was Jeff Gordon and Clint Bowyer, 4th and 7th respectively. And Marcus Ambrose wound up 13th this week, so a decent run for that team. Paul Menard was 28th, and not a very good run for Paul Menard, but right there with most of the rest of the C group. So Menard was not necessarily a disappointment, but it also wasn't a very good run. overall, considering where he qualified in the top 15. Third this week was the Wall Always Wins with 255 points, just 35 points out of first this week. Now, this is a very unique situation for the Wall. The Wall did not start an active driver in Group C this week. The lineup change, no lineup changes were made between last week and this week. Last week was a road course, so obviously a lot of the teams in the league chose road course drivers. This week, not only did the road course drivers skip this race because we're back on the ovals, but Robbie Gordon wound up skipping the race as well to focus on some other items. He put Bobby Labonte in his car this week, meaning Robbie Gordon skipped the race, and that wound up killing the Wall Always Wins in Group C, as Ron Fellows and Robbie Gordon were the only options for that team. So no points out of Group C, but still comes home third. That's actually quite impressive. The team had 3 drivers in the top 12, with Jeff Gordon 4th, Clint Boyer 7th, and Jeff Burton 12th. And then added on 15 points in qualifying, picked up the front row out of qualifying. So good move not to start those guys after qualifying on the front row, and picked up 15 points to try to make up for the loss in Group C. Fourth this week, just 5 points out of third, was High, Wide, and Handsome. 250 points, 40 points out of first this week. That team did not have a driver in the top 10, but had 3 drivers, 12th through 15th. Jeff Burton 12th, Denny Hamlin 14th, who didn't run well much of the day, and David Rudiman in 15th. And then Sam Hornish in 23rd, who surprisingly was actually the second best C driver this week. So the C group was not a place to pick up points this week. So that was pretty much a wash for a lot of teams, unless you started A.J. Allmendinger in the case of Team Edwards. Rounding out the top 5 was Lightning McQueen with 243 points this week, 47 points out of first. Had 2 drivers in the top 10, Jeff Gordon in 4th and Clint Boyer in 7th. And then disappointing runs from Paul Menard in 28th and the blow-up of Casey Kane in 36th. The only other team to start a lineup this week, Greek Thunder in 6th this week, 215 points, 75 out of first. Had Kevin Harvick in 5th, but no other driver in the top 20. Carl Edwards, a very disappointing 25th this week. Sam Hornish was 23rd out of Group C, and Casey Kane blew up and wound up 36th. Rounding out the field was the teams that haven't been setting their lineups for the last few weeks now. Whoa, a Left Turn was 7th with 116 points, got 12th from Jeff Burton, 27th from Scott Speed, but no points for the drivers in Group A, Jimmy Johnson, who's out of starts, and Earnhardt Jr., who's also out of starts in Group B. 8th was Oh No, a Blowout, with just 36 points this week, only scored with Paul Menard. The rest of the team is out of starts and needs to be changed. And last this week, again, Kane Rules, also not setting the lineup. Again, didn't score any points. In the overall standings, High, Wide, and Handsome now has 4,786 points, holds a 242-point lead over Hulk Smash, who moves into second, surpassing Lightning McQueen by 20 points. Lightning McQueen is now 262 points out of first place. So the top 3, there's a little separation between first and then second and third, but plenty of time to make up that ground, as we're only a little past halfway through the season. So fourth right now is the Wall Always Wins, 432 points out of first place, closely followed by Team Edwards, the driver, sitting 5th, 574 points out of first. The rest of the field, Greek Thunder moves up to 6th now with the lack of participation from the other teams. Greek is now 765 points out of first. Blowout has moved to 900 points out of first place with not setting the lineup yet again. 8th is Whoa, a Left Turn, 1,077 points out. And last is Kane Rules, who is over 2,500 points out of first place now. Next week, the next race is going to be Saturday night, so keep that in mind. Saturday night, the Coke Zero 400 presented by Coca-Cola at the Daytona International Speedway. So they're going to go back to restrictor plate racing, the return to the Daytona International Speedway this season's second visit to that track of the year. The pool is going to lock same time as always, Friday at 2 in the morning, so you're going to want to make sure you have your picks in Thursday night for who you want to start or possibly bench. And the actual starters pool locks Saturday at 4:44 p.m. So Saturday night action coming up this following week here. Week 18 is coming your way next week. We'll see you back here late Saturday night with further recap of the Week 18 action in the Tucson Racing Group.